Thatcher's Gourmet Popcorn is the very best popcorn established in Northern California since 1983. They offer some great flavors: caramel corn, cheddar cheese, kettle corn, and much more specialty popcorn. Thatcher's would like to offer 5 special listeners of the Extra Innings postgame show a chance to win a gift from Thatcher's Popcorn. All you need to do is send an email with your name, address, and phone number with your favorite flavor of popcorn to contest at THATCHERSpopcorn.com. Bill will announce next weekend the winners with more contests to follow.
This is KNBR Extra Innings with former Giants right-hander Bill Laskey.
Sponsored by Lenardi's Markets of the Bay Area. Quite simply, the best.
Hear him on your Apple HomePod by saying play KNBR. Play KNBR.
Welcome back to the Extra Inning Postgame Show. As you just heard, Thatcher's Popcorn wants to give you some free popcorn. So all you got to do is put your name, address, telephone number, put your favorite flavor of popcorn on an email to contest@thatcherspopcorn.com. They'll pick out 5 winners, send you a nice tub of brand new, fresh popcorn of all different flavors. A great thing that Thatcher's Popcorn is going to be doing every Sunday with me, so I appreciate my new sponsor, Thatcher's, and of course, they are a fantastic specialty popcorn company. All right, let's get to the phone lines. Let's go out to Benicia and talk to Rich. Rich, you're on an Extra Inning post-game show on a Sunday. How are you?
Hey, Tree, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. I thought they were going to win this series, though, Rich. I really felt good about today's game against Cade Povich. But, boy, the kid, the 26-year-old, put a clinic on with his breaking ball, and the Giants just couldn't hit.
Well, that's kind of why I called, and it's kind of almost kind of leading into what the bigger issue that I want to talk about is. And I'll try to make it real brief. But, basically 15 years or so, we haven't developed anybody in our minor league system. Yes, we had Posey, and yes, we had Linscomb. They spent a year in our minor league system. They were aces coming out of college and top draft picks. We did develop Kane. He's basically what Logan Webb is, which is kind of just a second, to me at least, second or third tier starter. A good inning eater, but not an ace by any means. But more importantly, the hitters. We haven't had one hitter that we've touted as being great in our minor league system ever amount to anything when they come to the majors. Elliott is the latest example, and who I like and I really want to be good, but I think is just going to be a kind of average major league player, and so on and so forth. And the signing, frankly, that Buster made of Devers was, in my opinion, a little bit of a desperation move. Granted, I think he got a good deal because we didn't give up much out of our minor league system because our minor league system is nothing. We really don't have a good minor league system. That's the whole point of my call. So we have now a kind of an older, diminished Devers that apparently doesn't come into camp even in shape. And I think we've got Pablo 2.0 going on with him.
Well, let me cut you off right there, Rich. We're not going to talk about body types. We're talking about hitting, and I don't agree when you start talking about he's not coming into camp, physically fit. He is. Body types are different. Body types don't mean how good of a player he is. Devers can hit. Right now, I think he's over-aggressive. I think he's swinging at a lot of things out of the zone, swinging through balls. I think he's trying to hit every ball off the moon. If he would just slow down a little bit and put the ball in play, because he does have magic off that bat. We just haven't seen the consistency of it. And I think that's the big thing. Now, minor leagues, I'm going to question that because the minor leagues are getting much better. The ability in A-ball to AA to AAA, there's some young talent there. Too young. But at AAA, there is a handful of guys that could possibly help this team. We're only 16 games into the season. You're not going to have a shakeup at the big league level. You're not going to have Bryce Eldridge up here. There's so many. Rodriguez down there. There's guys that are really hitting the ball well in Sacramento, but it's a AAA level. The big league level is totally different, Rich, and you know this. So you talk about what players could come up through the system. Casey Schmidt came up through the system. He's having a pretty good hitting year right now as a DH. You talked about Elliot Ramos. Yes, Elliot Ramos has struggled. But there is some players here capable of coming up to help this team. It's just what you're seeing now, the inconsistencies of the hitting. It bothers me, it bothers you, it bothers fans because we're not seeing the discipline. We're not seeing approach. We're not seeing adjustments. You saw it in a 3-game span, the 2 games in Philly and the first game in Baltimore. But yesterday and today, they did not make adjustments to the starting pitcher. Chris Bassett threw a hell of a game for 4 2/3. Their bullpen came, shut it out. Today, Cade Povich, a lefty, comes in and almost goes 7 innings, and it was mostly off-speed stuff. Breaking ball, curve ball, changeup, and the Giants didn't adjust to it. So we'll see what they do. Like I said, and I'm sure everybody's going to say it's only 16 games, but yes, would I like to see 10-6 instead of 6-10? 100%. So we just got to turn the page, go into Cincinnati, and hopefully this is where they turn it a little bit. A hitter's ballpark. Maybe some of these guys do get hit. Let's go up to L.A. and talk to Jeff. Jeff, you're on an Extra Innings Sunday edition. How are you?
Well, Bill, I wish I could tell you I'm better. I'm so incredibly frustrated because I really looked at this roster, and I realize you're right. It's only 16 games. But I looked at this and thought, this is the best lineup I've seen them have in years.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I think the rotation is going to be fine. I'm under-impressed with the signings of Malley and of Hauser, but I think they've been fine, and certainly Webby's going to turn it around. And I think the rotation, for the most part, is going to be, I'm going to say, above average, in fairness. I think the
I'm right there with you, Jeff. I am. When you look at what Malley did against Philadelphia, he had threw a gem. Hauser's been good. Today, it would have been a great game. He had 2 outs in the 5th inning. He just couldn't punch that last out in, and he was getting up in the 80s in pitches. Maybe he just couldn't get the ball down. A couple ball, a little flare to right field for a base hit by Ward. The double by Pete Alonso, the 0-2 pitch was down by his ankles. He golfed it down the third base line. A good hitting part, Alonso's that type of hitter. And they had shut Alonso out pretty much until he hit that first double. He was 0 for 7 going into that at bat. So good and bad. I'm right there with you with the starting pitching. I think when you get Hauser and Malley going 5-6 innings, I think that's enough. Roop's definitely throwing well. Logan Webb's had some ups and downs. Robbie Ray is probably your best starting pitcher right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think the bullpen eventually will start to figure itself out because I think these guys, given enough time, will start to show, the cream's going to rise to the top, and I think there's some cream to be found. I do think that obviously they weren't going to sign Diaz, but there were other back of the end of the game bullpen options. I'm sorry about the noise in the back here. I'm at a park. There were other guys that were available, and I'm forgetting their names right now, that were closers with other teams.
There was a handful.
Were not Diaz,
there was. Yeah,
right.
There was definitely
that I think they could have gone after, and I really am surprised that they didn't do that. I think the biggest disappointment, and one other thing, I know I'm all over the place here, but there's so much frustration. First of all, I love Tony Vitello. I'm so impressed with him, and I can't stand when anybody makes a comment. Give this man a chance. I don't think Buster's given him a good enough roster. That's just the thing, and I'm not faulting Buster.
Well, I think the roster's there, Jeff. I think the roster's there. I said it right out of spring training. I really believed what you said in the first part. This offense should be scoring 3, 4, 5 runs a game, every game. They have good hitters. They have veteran hitters. They have disciplined hitters, but they're just not consistent right now. And I'm watching these last 2 games. I'm like, how can you not get 3 or 4 runs off Chris Bassett? Today, Cade Povich only had 5 innings coming out of the bullpen, and he goes out there and shuts them down. These are the pitchers you have to mount attacks to and score 4 or 5 runs. And they're swinging too hard, out of the zone, chasing. And the next thing you know, 12 up, 12 down, and I'm like, are you kidding me? They're just not hitting this kid? And he ended up going 6 2/3 before they finally got a couple hits off him.
Yeah, I will tell you that if I had to point to anything specifically right now, Bill, and there's a lot wrong, and there's some things that are right, there's a lot that's wrong. I cannot get over the fact that these 3 starting outfielders are as pathetic as they've been so far. I can't comprehend this. Bader looks completely lost. I was really happy when they signed him, especially for defense.
So did I.
He's got to be a 240 hitter, Bill. And Jung-Hoo has got to be better than
Ramos and
this.
Lee, Ramos and Lee both struggling. They're both, all three of them. When you look at them, and you're thinking the outfield should have some offense production, and all three of them are not doing that.
Here's my question then. You can't make the knee jerks, and I understand that. But boy, before we turn around, they're going to be 10 games out of out of first place before the month is out. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but they are. This is terrible. Yeah. And you've got guys. I do watch the Sacramento games a lot. I know everybody's focused on Bryce. I think there's a logjam there. But I look at Barracoto and I look at Gilbert. And even possibly Brennan to get a lefty off the bench. And I don't know what can be done. I don't know if any of these guys have options to be able to be sent down to get them right. But we're going to see too many games go by, and it's going to be over before we know it. And Barracoto is burning things up down there, as is Gilbert. Brennan's hitting very well down there. Bring somebody up and inject something into this.
It might happen, but I just don't think they're going to hit that panic button yet, Jeff. I just don't think it's just too early in the season. Great names, what you just threw to me, and all of them. You get even add Rodriguez in there, the catcher, second baseman, outfielder. There are guys down there that are hitting. But again, this is the subject matter. That is AAA. This is the big leagues. Can they do it up here? We just don't know because they're young players and inexperienced. But I'm right there with you. The outfield play right now in the offense is dismal. When you said Ramos, Bader, and Jung-Hoo Lee, these guys got to hit. And your outfielders, if they're going to play every day, they got to put some numbers up. But it's early yet, Jeff, but thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Nick in Sacramento. Nick, you're on an extra inning postgame show on a Sunday. What's going on?
Bill, I hope you're doing better than everybody else seems to be.
Well, I think I'm out there struggling just like all the fans are. I felt today was a solid day for them. Yesterday, even though they only had 10 hits, but they scattered them, a lot of runners in scoring position that didn't score. I felt good today going against this lefty, but boy, this 26-year-old put a clinic on with breaking ball and fastball, and the Giants just couldn't turn anything around.
And Bill, I want to talk about the fact that if you're going to have an out get made when you're hitting, that's just going to happen. This game's more failure than anything else. But their at-bats are not good. There's a difference between yesterday Adames' 8, 9, 10 pitch at-bats versus you have Harrison Bader striking out on 4 pitches, or you have Devers letting a fastball go by right down the middle of the plate and then swinging it garbage after that. If you're going to get out, you need to make it a good at-bat. They're just not having good at-bats. And that's
well, and the other thing too, Nick, I got a statistic that tells you exactly what you just said. 10 fly ball outs. 10 fly ball outs against Cade Povich, and that tells you everything right there. They're under the ball. They're leading with their front shoulder. They're dipping their back shoulder. They just couldn't pick up the pitch. And what did he do? He just mowed them down in the first 4 innings, 12 up, 12 down, until Casey Schmidt got that hit in the 5th and ended up getting 1 run from Susac getting a base hit up the middle. Other than that, there was no hits that were put together to get a big inning even started.
Yeah. You just can't have a good game when you're not putting together good at-bats, when you're taking pitches that are hittable and you're swinging at junk and garbage and pitchers' pitches that they want you to swing at. It's just
Let me ask you this, Nick. Are you confident in this lineup, Nick? Do you think this team can turn it around with all these veteran hitters? Do you think this is something that you are gravitating to say, hey, it's early yet, but these guys are going to turn it around? Have you seen anything like that yet?
It reminds me, I think you asked the question very similar last season with everything, and I think Adames was – I said last year that, they're struggling, and I know it's early, but these guys are being paid and have the reputation to do really well, and they're not doing it. That there needs to be some warning light that says, you better check your engine, like checking the engine of your car. Yeah, you still got an engine and has the capability to go out and drive well, but you got to maintain it. You got to figure out what's going on and fix it before the problem ends up being more than just faulty
and Nick,
ignition.
And you make adjustments game to game, at bat to at bat, and that's not what I'm seeing. That's why I threw that number of 10 fly ball outs, and that is not an adjustment to me. Hit the ball down, hit the ball square, go the opposite way. Try to make better contact, and they're going into Cincinnati. It's a hitter's ballpark, but again, you got to get outs. And Robbie Ray's on the hill first time out, and so far he's been the most consistent starter. Maybe this change going into Cincinnati with a day off tomorrow, maybe get some life in the hitters. If you can get out there and score early instead of the opponent scoring first, because right now the Giants are 1-8 when the opponents score first. And you got to get up and get out if you're the visiting team. But we'll find out, Nick. Day off tomorrow. They're right back at it on Tuesday in Cincinnati. But thanks for the call. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. I got to get my 2 interviews in. Fantastic interviews. Cal Ripken Jr. is coming up next. Of course, the Baltimore Oriole Hall of Famer is number 8's retired. He's in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Just an accolade, a whole resume that's just unbelievable what this man did. And I got to sit down with him this week and talk, and I wanted to get this interview on. And then following him, I'll bring in Boog Powell. 2 great interviews. And the way I'm rushing it, I got a 3:30 out. So I want you to hear both these interviews as they're playing the Orioles. So we'll come right back with Cal Ripken Jr. right here on the Extra Inning Postgame Show.
KNBR, the sports leader. Innings with Bill Laskey keeps the postgame rolling live right here.
Sponsored by Lenardi's Markets of the Bay Area. Quite simply, the best.
On KNBR 104.5 FM and 680 AM, the sports leader.
Welcome back to the Extra Inning postgame show with Bill Laskey. My guest played 21 seasons in Major League Baseball. 19 of those, he was an American League All-Star. He was a World Series champion with the Baltimore Orioles in 1983, a two-time American League MVP, a two-time Gold Glove winner, 8-time Silver Slugger, an American League Rookie of the Year in 1982. The Baltimore Orioles inducted him into their Hall of Fame, and his number 8 was retired. In 2007, he was inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Let's welcome in Cal Ripken Jr.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. Listening to all those accomplishments. Sometimes it seems like it was a million years ago, but sometimes it seems like it was yesterday. Really cool to hear, though.
Well, Cal, I want to go back in time. As we grew up, you were very influential with a father, Cal Ripken Sr., who played some minor league baseball, but he also was managing in the minor leagues when you grew up. And I want to ask you, there's so many kids that have come up in Major League Baseball that got to go in clubhouses and meet players, and you were one of them. How influential was that to you?
It was a wonderful experience. I mean, Dad was the manager for the first 14 years of my life in the minors, and he went to many different parts of the country, and we followed him there for the summer times. And, how often does an 8-year-old kid get to go to work with their dad and hang out at the ballpark all day? But, the real value to that is that I was really familiar with professional baseball or the minor leagues. So when I got drafted, some players had trouble going away from home for the first time. But, to me, I was going into an environment that was pretty comfortable. I struggled, early on just learning the game because the game was too fast for me. But I think the advantage I had was I didn't have to go through any real adjustment of being away. And being in an unfamiliar environment, it all felt natural.
And Cal, one of the things you just said, being around your dad, being around the game of baseball, you got to know the game a little bit more than most kids, and you got to ask questions. Your dad said, my son Cal asked me better questions than most reporters. What was it about the game that intrigued you so much? What was it about that knowledge you had to grasp?
It's really funny. That makes me laugh is that, I was a kid that asked questions and why, and must have, pestered my dad a lot. But when I think about those days, Dad didn't teach me directly about baseball unless he answered the questions. He was teaching all the other guys on his team because at those days he was the hitting coach, the infield coach, the pitching coach, the catching coach, the base running coach. He was everything. And so when he would teach the minor league guys, when they made a mistake, I was there to witness that. And so I learned, through his teachings of other people. And so I always thought Dad was the encyclopedia of baseball, and I had him to ask questions to. But all the other players were like these little books. These books. I could go to them and say, Doug DeSensei, how do you feel the ground ball? And he would tell me, and I'd go back and tested against my dad. I said, I talked to Doug DeSensei today, and he said I should catch a ground ball this way. And he said, yes, that's correct. And then I would put Doug on my list to pester him. And if an outfielder would say you should catch the ball like a basket catcher off to the side or one-hander or something, I would tell my dad about that. And he would say, no, that's not the right way to do it. So I would X that book off my list.
Fantastic advice. And he's telling you the pluses and minuses about some of the players that he coached. So that was fun times. Yeah. But you said you go to high school and you end up playing some soccer, which is a total different sport. And you ended up playing baseball, played second base, and you pitched a little bit. Now, I pitched in the big leagues a little bit. How was that for you getting on the mound and throwing back then?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. So when I think about it, let me see. I went to Bluefield. I was 17. I was really young. I hadn't matured yet. Really, I was 6'2", 180 when I got drafted. And when everybody on the mound, and I started to get a little bit of my size in my junior year, started throwing the ball hard. And all the scouts were interested in me in pitching. I think the Orioles might have been the only one that was that saw me play a little bit more and play the position. And so ultimately I had a choice. I think the farm director wanted me to pitch. Earl Weaver had saw me play, and he said, I'm kind of interested in him, developing as a regular player. Mm-hmm. So the general manager, Hank Peters, told me, he said, what do you want to do, Cal? And it's kind of funny looking back now. I said, pitchers only get to play 1 out of every 5 games. I want to play every day.
Well, that was good advice. That was a good soundboard right there for you.
So they let me do it. And I often wonder, at first I was thinking, okay, in a blowout game, maybe I'll get a chance to go in and pitch and see what it's like. I had developed a really good curveball. I threw the ball pretty hard. George Bamberger, the old manager and the pitching coach at the Orioles, he taught me a really nice changeup. So I had some weapons. And in my high school senior year, I think I struck out 157 innings. So, again, we were facing a little bit less talented than the pros, but nonetheless, when you're pitching, it's everything because you're in control of the whole game. Mm-hmm. When you're at shortstop, you feel like you're a part of it and maybe a big part of it being in the middle of the infield. But I always thought pitching and catching had the most interesting positions because they were involved in every single pitch. Every decision was theirs.
Well, there's no question there. The spotlight always started the game with the pitcher throwing the first pitch. That's what my first high school coach always told me. He goes, you can't start a game without the pitcher throwing it. And you're absolutely right. The spotlight turned once that ball was thrown. Everything happened after that. Cal Ripken Jr. joining me on the Extra Inning postgame show. You get drafted out of high school. And I loved what you said. The next couple of steps, getting away from home. It's always one of the biggest questions and concerns for parents when their kid signs and goes off to the minor leagues. It seemed like you were ready for it. Tell me, at a young age, how confident were you?
Whatever confidence you brought into the camp in that first time, was immediately knocked away from me. I remember there was a shortstop by the name of Bob Bonner. Bob Bonner played at Texas A&M. He was there for, I think he had an extra year, maybe because of an injury. But he came in to our camp at 23 years old, I think, and I was 17. And Bob was really polished. I mean, he had a cannon for an arm. He turned a double play quicker than anything I ever saw. He took ground balls. He was just fluid. And I kept thinking, I'm never going to play. This guy's too good. And so he was there for about 4 or 5 days, and then they decided that he needed to go straight to Double-A. So they sent him to Double-A. I was in rookie ball, which opened up the space for me. But it took a little while to look around and kind of, compare yourself to the rest of the league. And in my first year, I didn't hit a single home run. I went 60-some games without a home run. I think I hit 264 and started to get it a little bit at the end. But confidence, I kept thinking, God, I don't think I'll ever make it. And then I went to instruction league and started to grow a little bit, started to get it. And I think my breakout year was Double-A in Charlotte. I hit 25 homers, drove in close to 100 runs. And I thought, okay, my dad used to say that Double-A a lot of times was a separator because that's when the pitchers really understood their stuff. They threw different pitches in different counts. And if you didn't make any adjustments, then you weren't going to make it. And so when I had success in Double-A, I thought I was going to make it.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Double-A was always that first step, and then Triple-A was the next step, and that's where you ended up in 1981 in Rochester. A good ballpark to hit in. I pitched in that ballpark, and it was fun, but it was tough on pitchers. You had a great year there, 23 home runs. You hit 288, 75 RBIs, and 114 games, and you get called up to the big leagues on August 7th. And Earl Weaver said, hey, kid, you're up in the big leagues now. You can play third base. You can be a utility infielder. How exciting was that for you when you first got to the big leagues?
Super exciting. I mean, and one thing that I wasn't prepared for, I was comfortable in the minor league setting because I've been there before. But actually walking on the field for the first time in a big league stadium, and my first big league appearance was as a pinch runner. Don't think. And I ran out for Ken Singleton, and Ken Singleton looks at me and says, "You're running for me?" And Frank White put a pickoff play on right away, and I got back, safely. And he goes, "Just checking, kid." And I scored the winning run. But going out there on the field for the first time and looking up and seeing the bright lights and all that kind of stuff, that was a new experience, being down there on the field. And it took a little while to get used to. you're on TV, the media's there. It's a much bigger deal. And it took me a little while to get comfortable in that environment. And I didn't get a chance to play a whole lot when I got called up. It was after the strike was over. I think I had 39 at-bats, and they were all, separated. But then they traded Doug DeCinces in the offseason and made room for me at third. I was having a really good year in winter ball. And they made the decision that I'd be a third baseman. And so then everything started off in '82 pretty well. So it was a spot open for me. And the surprise part about that first year was once I got my feet on the ground at third, Earl Weaver surprised everyone and moved me to short, and I thought it was going to be a temporary move just to change the offense a little bit. But I always laugh, and I look back on it, that temporary move lasted 15 straight years.
It sure did, and fabulous 15 years, Cal. Cal Ripken Jr. on Extra Inning Postgame Show with me, and it ended up very well in 1982. You ended up being the American League Rookie of the Year, and everything started there. But I want to ask you, being as tall as you were, being as long as you were, was there an adjustment playing shortstop once you moved from third base? Because most of the shortstops were smaller than you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, some of them in the history of baseball, they had nicknames like Pee-wee and Scooter. And then you see the most acrobatic shortstop in Ozzie Smith that could do backflips and cover all kinds of ground and throw and run. So I was a different prototype of the shortstop for sure. But, Mark Belanger was 6'2", about 180. And when I got drafted, I was 6'2", 180. And then I grew almost 3 inches and put on, roughly 8 pounds or 10 pounds a year. And I played regularly at shortstop at 6'4", 225. And the funny part about that was when I first went away to Bluefield, West Virginia, the game seemed to be fast, and you had to get your footwork set, you had to catch it, you had to release it. And when we had an injury at third in my second year and they moved me to third base, it was much easier at third base at that point in my development. And then I became a third baseman all the way up until Earl moved me. And when I went back to short, I had the timing, the internal clock. I could catch, I could throw accurately. Then I started to really apply myself at shortstop. And, the interesting part, I said, I got all this ground to cover. I might not be as fast as Ozzie Smith, but, maybe I'll look at the pitcher. I'll see what pitches he's going to throw. What are the hitter's tendencies? And I learned to position myself pretty well. And one of my most proud things that I did defensively, I think there's only 2 shortstops in the history of baseball that had 900 chances in a year. And one of them was Ozzie Smith, and the other one was me. So you had 2 different type of shortstops, but I was able to cover the ground by positioning well and kind of understanding how I made those plays. And so you always encourage, different infielders of different sizes, be yourself, play your position, figure out how you make the plays, and then just go with it.
No question, Cal. Your fundamentals were beautiful. The accuracy, the strong arm, how you moved. And back then, studying hitters were totally different than the way we have now with all the analytics, and you had to learn about different hitters as each team came at you. But you won 2 Gold Gloves. In 1991, you had 11 errors. In 1992, you had 12 errors. But I went back to find out what the hell happened in 1990 when you only had 3 errors.
I know.
And you had a 996 fielding average. And I looked it up, and Mark McGwire ended up winning the Gold Glove. And he ended up having 5 errors. And I'm like, it didn't make sense to me. What happened? Do you understand why you didn't get it that year?
It's kind of interesting. Every once in a while now, Rawlings will ask me to go up to New York and present the Gold Glove Award. I presented, I think, at short, and I presented it third before. And now when they go back and do the analytics and apply it to your numbers years ago, the guys up there were saying, you probably should have won a few more Gold Gloves than you did. And I kept thinking, the year I had 900 chances, I think Alan Trammell won it. And I did have like 24 errors, but in 900 some chances. And I thought I had a really great year that year, and I thought I was deserving. And the one year I had 3 errors, and I went almost 100 games without an error. That was a special year too. And I think they awarded Ozzie Guillen with that. Wow. And sometimes you look back because the managers and the coaches at that time were the ones that voted on it.
Yeah.
And I think many times maybe they didn't look at the numbers and they just looked off the top of their head, maybe by reputation, and said, oh, yeah, that guy should get the Gold Glove, and then they filled it out that way. But I think now there is a part of it that is statistical, and I think there is some subjective, and I think there is some managers and coaches that put the award on. But looking back, you're right. That 3-error season was, and I think when I look at those 3 errors, I'm thinking, if the official scorer was a little lenient, I might not add any. We had George Brett hit one off the end of the bat, spinning really crazy in Kansas City. And I'm the shortstop. The only chance I had was to kind of take a steep angle, swipe at it, with my glove. The third baseman couldn't cut it off. And I swiped at it, and it spun out of my glove. And I might not have been able to get him out anyway. But they, in Kansas City with George Brett, they could have ruled that a hit.
Sure.
And then I had another one with Cecil Fielder. He had a jam job, a little pop up over that pitcher's head, and I come in to field it. And Detroit's infield wasn't too good, and it bounced up and hit me in the chest. And I recovered, threw the ball a little late to first base, and it was a bang play. Might have got him out, but the umpire called him safe, and they ruled that a straight error. So I almost had a perfect season.
That was, when I was looking up the numbers, Cal, I was just like looking year after year, and I stopped right there in 1990, and I just couldn't believe it. Then I looked and saw Mark McGwire winning the Gold Glove, and I was like, first baseman, and how many opportunities you had compared to him. That's why I had to ask that question, because it just didn't make sense to me on that. And like you said, there was other years you should have won the Gold Glove.
I thought I was deserving in those years, but I mean, you can't look back and I was very proud of the defense I was able to provide. And many times people looked at me as just an offensive shortstop, but I was proud of the defense I played.
Oh, no question. 8-time Silver Slug winner. And I want to look into a stat here that's always opens my eyes for good hitters, was runners in scoring position. You hit 285. You had over 1,220 RBIs. It's a different mental part of the game with runners in scoring position. How did you approach those at bats?
It's really interesting. My teammate I played with, I thought was the very best at 2 out, getting a runner in from second base. It was Eddie Murray. Mm-hmm. Eddie Murray was just a super clutch guy. And I remember his approach was, you take what the pitcher gives you. Like many times you go up there and try to do too much. But if you're getting pitched on the outside part of the plate, you got a guy on second base, don't try to pull it. Don't try to jack it over the fence. Just go with it and hit a line drive and get the runner in. And I think that sort of approach, putting the ball in play, maybe cutting down on your swing a little bit, use the bigger part of the field, was a really good approach. And I don't know whether the analytics now really celebrate an RBI guy. But I mean, somebody's got to drive the run in, and runs scored and RBIs are how you win games. And so we always took pride in trying to be that clutch type hitter where we could come through with that, especially with 2 outs and a guy on second.
Well, Cal, as we finish up here, we have to talk about the great day. September 6, 1995, of course, breaking Lou Gehrig's consecutive games. An emotional day for you, your family, emotional even for the Baltimore Oriole fans. A day you'll never forget, and Dale, I'll never forget as being a baseball player as well as a fan. When you think back at those days, leading up to it, it had to be a little nervous, a little anxiety getting to you. What did you think coming into that?
So it is interesting. The Orioles did a special thing, and Bobby Bowe came back, and Rafael Palmeiro came back, and we kind of, reenacted them pushing me down the line for the lap, which was a hoot. But going through it, I never allowed myself to really think, about what the number was, or even what the record was. And the only time that I felt any pressure was probably in that year. 95 was after we came off the strike, and they canceled the World Series. They locked us out of spring training. The season was shortened a bit, and the fans were a little upset at us, because the collective bargaining had gotten in the way.
Right.
And there was a special interest in the streak that year. And so I tried to do whatever I could, to almost say you're sorry. You gave yourself to the media, you gave yourself to the fans. And I tried to control, the celebration of the streak so it wouldn't affect my teammates. But when it got right down to it, they were planning this big day. And I never ever felt, if I get hurt or something happens in the game, it's just the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden, and I wasn't sleeping particularly well. The excitement level was high and a little anxiety. But I think it was a big relief after 21:30. You got through it. I knew 21:31 would happen. And then I was able to relax a little bit and enjoy. And the most important thing I thought during that series was for our team to play well and for me to do well. It wasn't just a celebration of an attendance record. It was a celebration of being out there and a home run in each one of the games, 21-29, 21-30, and 21-31, and we won all three.
Mm-hmm.
And California was in that race. So I thought that was as important. But, yeah, there was quite a bit of nerves and a lot of excitement running around the ballpark, too.
Cal, as we finish up, you do so many things for charities. You won the Roberto Clemente Award for all the things you do off the field. But the one thing that I always love about reading about you is all the things you do for kids, the next players in Major League Baseball. And you do so much for Little Leagues, Colts, Summer Ball, so many different things in the teaching method of baseball. How do you take that from your heart and do that for the kids?
Well, I mean, my mom and dad were always people that were really involved in the community. They encouraged me to get involved. I remember my mom said, just think, if you make it to the big leagues and you sign a big contract, not only can you help with your time, but you can help with your money. And I think that was just the way that we were brought up. And I particularly liked, in the beginning, I didn't think about it so much. If you slam your helmet down or you throw a fit on the field, that kids are watching. But Ken Singleton pulled me aside, like in my first year. He showed me in the video room that I had broken a helmet on the top step of the dugout. And he goes, what do you think that looks like? And I go, it looks bad, doesn't it? And he goes, yeah. He goes, we don't do that here. and he reminded me that people are watching. And so I just tried to contain. He took me back to a little room, and there was this big rubber thing hanging from the ceiling. He said, if you need to get your frustration out, come beat the heck out of that and get it out that way. But it was an interesting piece of advice.
Sure.
That kids are watching. I know I watched and looked up to, my hero was Brooks Robinson, and I tried to be just like him. So when you're aware of that and you're aware of how kids look at it, you just try to watch yourself a little bit. And I've always enjoyed the influence I had with kids.
Well, Cal, thank you for your time today. What a great career. I loved watching you, competed against you, and I'll never forget the days that you went out there daily and competed. And thank you again.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was good to go down memory lane here a little bit. Thank you.
Yep, that was Cal Ripken Jr. And on the Extra Inning Postgame Show. More coming up right here on KNBR, the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. Bill is back.
Fired up, bringing it, all excited.
This is KNBR Extra Innings with Bill Laskey.
Sponsored by Lenardi's Markets of the Bay Area. Quite simply, the best.
Listen on your Google Home smart speaker by saying play KNBR.
All right, back on the Extra Inning post-game show on a Sunday afternoon here in Northern California. Giants lose today in Baltimore 6-2. They drop 2 out of 3 to the Orioles. They have a day off tomorrow in Cincinnati, and then they start a 3-game series. Let's look at the probables real quick. Tuesday, first pitch out here on the Pacific Coast time is 3:40. Robbie Ray takes the hill. He's 2-1 with a 2.08 going against a right-hander, Brady Singer. And he's 0-1 with a 7.7 earned run edge. He has not been pitching well for the Reds. On Wednesday, Tyler Mahle gets the ball. He's 0-2 with a 4.3 going against Rhett Lauder, 1-1 with a 3.3. On Thursday, it's a 9:40 a.m. game here. It's an afternoon game in Cincinnati. Landon Roop takes the hill. Of course, he won on Friday here in Baltimore. He's 2-1 with a 3.2. Against Chase Burns, 1-1, a 3.3 earned run average. Singer, Lauder, and Burns are all right-handed pitchers, so the Giants are going to see 3 right-handers. I hope you enjoyed the Cal Ripken Jr. interview. I really enjoyed talking to him, and there's so many more things I wanted to bring up, but I didn't have enough time, as they always say. There were so many things that he did. But coming up next, a great one for you again, Boog Powell. Of course, nobody knows his real name. John Wesley Powell is his name. Everybody knows him as Boog Powell. 17 years he played in Major League Baseball with the Baltimore Orioles for 14, the Indians for 2, the Dodgers for 1. He was an AL MVP in 1970, 4-time All-Star. He won the World Series twice, and he's in 1979. The Baltimore Orioles inducted him into the Baltimore Orioles Hall of Fame. Coming up next, I sit down with Boog Powell, a funny and great interview. That's coming up next right here on KNBR, the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the sports leader.
Welcome back to the Extra Inning postgame show with Bill Laskey. I'm honored to bring my guest on, a 4-time American League All-Star, a 2-time World Series champion with the Baltimore Orioles, American League Most Valuable Player in 1970, and in 1979, the Baltimore Orioles inducted him into the Orioles Hall of Fame. Let's welcome in Boog Powell. Boog, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Bill. Thank you very much for that introduction.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Boog, you played 17 years in Major League Baseball, one of the greatest infields that the Baltimore Orioles put out there with Brooks Robinson, Mark Belanger, Davey Johnson. How fun was that playing first base, watching those three guys put the leather out there?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And, you know, for the first 5 years of my life, I was a left fielder. And I played behind Brooks Robinson and Louis Aparicio playing left field. And I didn't get a lot of ground balls in left field. I mean, those guys sucked everything up. Of course, you know, and then we had Davey Johnson and Jim Gentile was in Baltimore. And I wasn't going to, I was a first baseman, really. I didn't have any business being in the outfield, but you know, I did okay out there.
You did great, Boo. You really did. But I want to go back. You signed with the Baltimore Orioles, and you ended up coming to the big leagues. As you say, as a left fielder, how nervous were you when you first came up to the big leagues?
Well, my first game in the big leagues was in 1961 on, I don't know the exact date, but it was in Yankee Stadium. And Roger Maris at number 58 in my first game. But I drove in the winning run.
That's pretty good for your first game. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but I struck out my first time. And the second time I got a base hit, drove in a run, and we won the game with that run that I drove in. I don't remember it. I don't remember all the details.
Boog Powell joining me on the Extra Inning postgame show. Boog, you hit 339 home runs. You hit 3 home runs in one game 3 times. 3 times you did this. You were an excellent power hitter. As I say, the numbers are there. Those days, you must have been seeing the ball like a beach ball. Tell me about those home run games.
Well, the first 2 were against Washington. And their pitching staff wasn't quite special. And I hit them really good. Matter of fact, I hit 10 home runs against Washington 2 years in a row. You know, just Washington. And then on the last one, I hit 3 in Boston. And Jim Lomborg, I hit the first 2 off of Jim Lomborg. And the third one that I hit was off a guy named John Wyatt. Used to call him the Green Goose. And he was well known for loading them up. And he threw me one of those, and I hit it right over the fence down the left field line. In Boston, we won the game 3-0. So wasn't a big deal, you know. It's what I did.
You sure did. And let's go to 1970, a fabulous year. You were voted the AL MVP. Of course, that year, the Baltimore Orioles won the World Series. And numbers that year, prestigious, a .297 batting average, 156 hits in 154 games you played, 28 doubles there. And again, big number, 36 home runs, 114 RBIs. Everything was good for you as a cleanup hitter. And everything was portrayed as an MVP year. How have things worked that year? How consistent did you stay?
That was really a good year. But it seemed to me that the year before, 69, for me was a better year. I drove in 121 the year before. And to me, that's what hitting's all about, is driving in runs.
It sure was.
The hitting home runs takes care of itself. And doubles and all that takes care of itself. But ribbies are where it's at, and that's how you win games. And that's all I wanted to do. And I drove in more runs, and Killebrew won it in 69. And who's going to say anything about that, you know? And of course, he had a wonderful year. He hit 40 and drove in 130 some, but he hit 260. I hit 305 in '69. So,
You did.
You know,
You did in '69. You had better numbers than you did in 1970. What you just talked about, and Killebrew etched you in there, and overall numbers, you know, exceeded what you thought you were going to get in 1970. And it's just amazing that the year after, when you should have won it, you didn't, but you should have won it both years, Boog.
I think they gave it to me because they realized, and Killer came up to me at the start of spring training, and he says, he said, you've been had. he says, you had a better year than I did. And I said, Killer, I am not sorry. I says, and we had a good relationship together. And he was a special guy. And, you know, the next year I won it, and I'm down in Miami. I'm sitting out in my boat with my daughter. My daughter's 3 years old. And I'm sitting out in the boat with her, and we did all the press and all that stuff sitting in my boat. That was pretty fun.
That had to be a good memory, too, with your daughter. But, Boog, your dad gave you this nickname, and a nickname that my parents used to call me, too, because I grew up in the Midwest. And he used to call you Booger. And a lot of it was just being a little honorary kid. My mom used to say the same thing to me. But it seems like your dad stuck that name to you. Tell me how that happened.
Well, they were just sitting there. The way I understand it, I came out and my mother and father were there, and I was about 3 years old, and everybody was sitting around, and I came out into the middle of the room totally naked. And said, "Look at that little booger." But that's the clean version.
That's a clean version we can only talk about on radio, right?
Well, yeah, and then my Aunt Eunice says, "I don't remember it that way." And I says, "Well, what do you remember?" She says, "Well, I remember when you were 2 or 3 years old, there was a radio show in Lakeland called Dr. Boogit, Boogit. I've tried to look it up, and it doesn't exist. And it must have been just a little local something. And she said, "Where's that little Boogit?" And then it just got, and then when I finally got to the big leagues, I'm doing an interview with Dizzy Dean. And Dizzy Dean's out there, and he said, "Son, you need to get rid of that nickname." Now, here's a guy named Dizzy.
Right.
He had a brother named Daffy.
That's great.
and he's talking about my nickname. I says, "I think I'll just leave it like it is."
Boog Powell joining me on the Extra Inning postgame show. So, Boog, does anybody know your real name? Because it's John Wesley Powell. Does anybody even call you John?
Well, my teachers did in school, and that's about when it stopped. And, you know, ever since then, and one of the sports writers in Baltimore, John Stedman, he says, and I used to like to sign autographs and stuff like that. And he says, "Why do you use your last name?" I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "All you need to do is write Boog. You're the only one."
That's
and
great.
That's one of the true regrets that I have, that I didn't start doing that sooner. You know?
Well, Boog, you played defense pretty well. You had a defensive fielding percentage over 990, over 17 years, just over 130 errors. But a lot of that, like you said, 17 errors in left field, just a little over 110 at first base. But when you're looking at over almost 2,000 games in the field, those numbers are pretty damn good for a first baseman.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed when I got traded to Cleveland in '75. I thought that I had the best year ever as a fielder. And what's his name? George Scott was over at first base for Boston, and everybody, he's by far the best, by the best. But when you look up George's stats since 1975, he made 13 errors playing first base. I made 3, handling the same amount of chances. So,
Yeah, I wonder why you don't have that gold glove sitting on your mantle there.
I really wanted that. I really wanted it because I worked hard at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I had soft hands. I always had soft hands. And, I just, maybe I wasn't the fastest guy, but I got to, I caught.
You sure did. In 1966 and 1970, the Baltimore Orioles won the World Series. But also, you had 33 postseason games. You hit over 260, 4 doubles, 6 home runs, 18 RBIs. A solid postseason run by Boog Powell. What were your thought patterns going into the latter part of summer, going into October, trying to stay focused for those postseason games?
Yeah, my fondest memory is in '69, the first year that they had the playoffs. They had the divisions, and it just didn't seem right because we won our division by 19 games, I think. And why should we have to play anybody?
Mm-hmm.
But Minnesota won their division, so at that time there were only 2. And so anyway, we go to Minnesota, we beat them 2 games there, and then we come back to Baltimore and we win 1, and bang, we're in the playoffs. And then I said, what's the big deal? But it would have been a big deal if they would have beat us and we won our division by 19 games.
Mm-hmm.
But, as you know, in a short series like that, anything could happen.
Boog Powell joined me on the Extra Inning postgame show for a few more minutes. Miller Lite commercials, one of the best things Miller Lite did for their brand, and you were part of it. How fun was that doing those commercials? Because every one of them was hilarious, and you were a big part of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, they gotten into the marina business down here in Florida, and I was watching Mars Thornberry, sitting there saying, I still don't know why they wanted me to do this commercial. And I said, I can do that. So I made a phone call to an agent in New York and talked to him and said, well, why don't you come up and we'll do a trial. And so I went up there and I did that, and they liked me. Then they said, we need an umpire. So, my deal was that Jim Honachek came in.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the commercial, Jim Honachek's trying to read the label on a bottle. And he can't read it. And I took my glasses off, and I handed my glasses to Jim. And I said, here, Jim, try these. And he put, oh, yeah, it says here, got third less calories, it tastes great. And he said, oh, you're Boog Powell.
Oh, great commercial. So that was a great commercial.
I did 17, and I had the most fun I ever had, as we used to say, with our clothes on. Man, it was great. And Bob Uecker was, right in the middle of it all. And, Uecker he was unbelievable to be around.
He was hilarious, and your commercial stands out. I still remember it very vividly. But as we finish up, 1992, Boog's Barbecue at Camden Yards. And, boy, you had lines going down the aisles all to get to Boog's Barbecue. I got to ask you, what's your favorite entree there?
Well, when we decided to do it, I worked with the chefs at Aramark, and we worked for about 2 months on different menus and different things to do. And one of the favorites in Maryland or in Baltimore is a dish called pit beef.
Mm-hmm.
And they're 16-pound pieces of top round. And we just burn them off a little bit in the ovens upstairs. And we brought them down to the grill. And we burn them a little bit there and slice them paper thin. And I'll try to serve it medium rare. And it's as good as any steak you ever had. And anyway, I said, this is it. And then we added turkey, and then for quite a few years we had pork, we had pulled pork, and then we did ham last year. But we cut the ham out this year. We're just doing beef and turkey now, and we had no idea what was going to happen. I mean, opening day in 1992, we had about, I don't know, we had maybe 200 pounds of meat.
Wow.
We were sold out before the game started. So now the next day we got 400. We sold out again before the game started. So now I'm going, we got something going here. And it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And I did that standing out on Utah Street. I did that for 28 years. And I would meet people and greet people. And, hi, how you doing? Welcome to the game. You know, who's going to win tonight? Blah, 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 you know. And it was fun. It was fun. And
well, it's a
good
fabulous
time.
place to visit, and everybody that I know goes to your barbecue. It's an entree that they'll never forget. But today, Boog, I want to thank you for your time on a fantastic career. And, you know, good luck with everything because you're doing the right things at the right time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bill. Good luck to you and all my friends out in Frisco.
That was Boog Powell on the Extra Inning Postgame Show. More coming up right here on KNBR, the Sports Leader.
You're listening to the former Giants righty. It's KNBR Extra Innings with Bill Laskey.
Sponsored by Lenardi's Markets of the Bay Area. Quite simply, the best.
Heard on your Apple HomePod by saying play KNBR.
Welcome back to the Extra Inning postgame show as we close out a Sunday. The Baltimore Orioles beat the Giants 6-2 to take the series. They won 2 out of 3. The Giants now travel to Cincinnati. They have off tomorrow, and then they play the Cincinnati Reds Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. First game right here, first pitch on Tuesday, 3:40 in the afternoon. Robbie Ray against Brady Singer. And then Tyler Mahle will pitch on Wednesday, Landon Roop on Thursday. Next weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'll be right back on KNBR Sports Phone. KNBR on Friday, Extra Innings on Saturday and Sunday. I want to thank my two guests today. Hope you enjoyed both of those interviews. Cal Ripken Jr. as well as Boog Powell. If you didn't, they'll be on the All KNBR podcast. I want to thank my producers, Rafael Coriel and Kyle Haar, running the show. Didn't have a lot of time for phone calls today because we're a little short. For Bill Laskey, have a great week, and I'll be on next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Coming up next on ESPN, and it's following up on KNBR, the Cleveland Guardians against the Atlanta Braves. For Bill Laskey, have a good night. We'll talk later. More coming up right here on KNBR, the sports leader.
KNBR, the sports leader.